Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. This is the programme where you can have your property related questions answered by our team of property experts. Ranjan, then we'll move on to your question. What should I know before buying a property with an existing residential tenant on the top 2 floors and a commercial shop tenant on the ground floor?
Yes, I mean this is a very common thing. It's all about what due diligence and basically the checklist of things to look for if you're buying a shop with upper parts as residential. Starting with a shop, you've got to, starting with the whole thing, you've got to make sure that what you're buying, you're getting what it says on the tin. So if, let's say the shop is rented out for £20,000, you've got to make sure, one, that is actually, the rent received is £20,000 per annum. Sometimes with commercial properties, landlords let them on a rent-free period. So it might be subject to the first 12 months being rent-free and the £20,000 kicking in. So if you're buying it 6 months into the lease, you want to know when the actual, whether there's a rent-free period still in, and when you're actually going to start receiving that commercial rent. And you want to make sure that there are no arrears, and whether there have been any breaches in the lease obligations for that commercial property. With the residential property, I think has got far more complicated these days, because with ASTs, there's a whole bunch of regulation now, and which means that your paperwork has got to be in order if you're going to effectively serve notice at the end of the tenancy. So you need to know whether, when the AST was granted, whether the tenancy deposit was properly registered, whether it had a valid EPC, whether gas safety and all this stuff was given to the tenant at the time. So you've got to make sure that when that AST was granted, it was all done properly, because you may not be able to get possession from that tenant if it has not been. So again, a lot of checking.
Interesting point there. The government are talking now about doing away with the automatic reclaim of property on Section 21 notices. I think a lot of people are panicking at the moment that it's already in. In actual fact, it's not, I understand. But what do you think the government logic is there?
I think, who knows what government logic is, but I think there has been a shift over time. I mean, when Margaret Thatcher was in power, she famously used the phrase, Britain is a home-owning democracy. And since Margaret Thatcher, the tenant base has risen substantially, and tenants are voters.
But it was that government that brought in the assured short-hold tenancy.
Yes, it was.
To encourage landlords to come into the market.
Yes, but it's what I'm saying is it's swung the other way.
Yeah.
There are more renters out there. Their voting interests have to be catered for. And I think the Section 21, I mean, because Jeremy Corbyn was all out there with very anti-landlord stuff, I think under Theresa May, there was a tendency to try to outdo Jeremy Corbyn on tenant-friendly legislation. Hopefully, things may change, because we seem to have a much more business-friendly cabinet now.
Well, let us hope so. But again, you know, same thing. We're now going to be on our 9th housing minister in 8 years.
Yes.
It's very difficult to see how you get sort of coordinated programmes over the years.
I think people also need to they need to look at like the bigger picture, is that it's difficult for a lot of individuals to get on the housing ladder, versus 30, 40, 50 years ago. It was a completely different story. So nowadays someone can go and have a significant amount of money, maybe 30, 40, 50, 60,000 pounds, and not be able to buy in London. So they're forced into renting, and there's this overwhelming feeling. I think we'll adopt more of a European model where renters need to have a lot more rights.
Well, that's all very well, Tom, but if you create, I mean, Margaret Thatcher, you won't remember because you're a young chap, but Margaret Thatcher...
I was there as I was 2 years old.
Well, there you go. So, look, Margaret Thatcher created these ASTs, or a government did, because up until that point, landlords would let out properties and you ended up with what they used to term as sitting tenants. You couldn't get your property back. So she thought, right, well, partly to alleviate the housing problem, putting these properties on the market with assured short-hold tenancies would ensure that the landlord could get their property back. And if they're private landlords, you've got to remember they're not institutions, so their personal circumstances may change. They may not be able to fund the mortgage anymore. It may not be convenient to own that property anymore. So the right to be able to get it back was quite important. Now, the government even today are saying, look, rental's great contributory factor to getting the housing list down. We've got to encourage it, and yet this government does seem to be going the other way. You've got pretty punitive tax laws now, which all the accountants are saying is a tax grab, this Section 24. So landlords are being hit on tax, they're being hit on availability,
But the thing I'm seeing is that property professionals or investors are already voting with their feet. The surge in interest I've seen in commercial property, buy-to-let, has been huge, and that is borne out by auction statistics and sales statistics over the recent years. Because all this regulation isn't there if you buy a commercial shop and you have a mortgage, no Section 24. Then the most commercial properties are still let out under an Act of Parliament set up in 1954, and it hasn't substantially been changed, because commercial leases are basically business agreements. There are no votes in making those sort of anti-landlords.
I think you just hit the nail on the head there, haven't you?
So I'm seeing established buy-to-let professionals have got portfolios of properties saying, I don't want to buy any more residential, I want to buy commercial.
There's some dangerous consequences to all this.
I mean, we're noticing that with a lot of the clients that we deal with that would have previously got into buy-to-lets for the purpose of an investment, just see it as a dead donkey and just don't want to be involved at all. So they're looking into other areas.
The Section 24 tax grab, I mean, is actually putting some private landlords into negative cash flow. That's all we have time for now. So join us next time on Property Question Time.
If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you're not a subscriber, what are you waiting for? Subscribe, hit the bell icon. As soon as we upload, we'll let you know. And enjoy these. They're all dedicated to helping you be more successful in property. Happy investing!